All right.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining the Responsibly Wasted team. We have a special guest today. It's said throughout the county he does everything with his hat on, including sleep. And it's big. This studio is 20 by 20, and his hat sucks it down to 5 by 5. I've personally heard people yell, "Don't stand so close," and they were across the street.
2 hours later.
Well, without further ado, this is our Cottonmouth Chris. Welcome.
Good evening.
It's safe to say you're a Bigfoot believer, a Sasquatch
Enthusiast.
A
I
Yeti
like-
would be the-
enthusiast.
I like that
A
word
Yeti enthusiast.
better
Okay.
because I'm maybe almost off the fence, but I don't know why.
Wait, on what side of the fence, though?
On the believing side,
Okay.
because I just haven't seen one yet.
Gotcha.
But I'm not really positive I want to see one if they really do exist. Because I like to spend a lot of time in the outdoors, and it may completely change my mind about wanting to stay outside.
Has there been sightings around here that we know of?
Not around here, but some. There have been some, but not. I don't think as credible as other places, say like Washington,
So they don't like the heat.
Canada.
They like the wet, but not the heat.
Well, you're covered in hair, so you really don't want to be where it's hot.
What's Mikey's excuse then?
I
Why is he
Shut
here?
it. Shut it down. Shut it down.
How do you do that? Thank you.
I don't think they know how to operate a Dollar Shave Club razor just yet, so
Yeah, we really
yeah. I mean, I think a black bear, if you stick a thermometer in its hair, the outer part of its hair on a sunny day, I think it's well over 100 degrees. So
don't.
yeah, that's why you always see them in the water.
They're in the water too?
That's why you see them coming down into Phoenix and into the other areas now to get in
Oh, the
pools.
bears.
The bears.
Okay, I thought we were
was
talking
like-
about Bigfeets.
I know. I was like, I didn't cross that upon my research, but
Yeah,
Bears.
because
Yeah, no, so you have to think the same. Most reports the hair is not long. It's more like an orangutan, maybe. Kind of hangs off the arm, but it's only maybe 1 to 2 inches long most of the time. And it's hair, not fur. That's a consistent thing in most people's encounters when they tell their story.
interesting.
I've listened to a lot of stories lately. It really affects some people. I mean, like PTSD affects people, especially hunters, because they don't know where they see this thing and they do not know where to catalog it in their brain, and it really screws them up because they just it totally blows them away. They don't know what to do.
That's funny. You say hunters. I read in Washington, there's actually a rule against hunting. There's like a $10,000 fine that they'll actually levy against you for hunting Bigfoot. Isn't that? I mean, I never even imagined.
There's been a lot of people that have said they've drawn down on them, but once they've seen what's looking back at them, they can't do it. They say it looks too human to them to shoot.
now before the natives, it's kind of a native thing. It kind of means wild man or wild something. Before that, were there sightings, or is this a Native American phenomenon?
There's a guy that is writing. He's on his second book, and he goes back to all the old newspaper clippings, and he looks for all these old articles that have been forgotten of wild men or hairy creatures, and they've been down in. There was a really good one that happened down in San Diego, and they actually killed the creature, but of course, there's no reports of it after they killed it because it was a long time ago. But it was in a place called, I think it's called Dead Man's something out there in San Diego. It was a stagecoach stop, and people kept coming up dead. And they found the creature, and they chased him up the hill and shot him before he got into his cave. And when they went in the cave, they found all the dead bodies in there. So the guy that had just been recently killed, they found up there. But they describe it as a hairy man, not so much as a Bigfoot. But see, that term didn't come really into use until, way later. Even gorilla, things like that, those terms didn't come into use until I think probably in the later 1800s when they finally found them. And even pandas, like I was telling Mike, once they found that the pandas were real, it took them 60 years after that to actually find them.
And you don't think it's that werewolf syndrome?
No, I don't think it's, and I don't even know what that's called.
Hypertrichosis?
Yeah, they're not sideshow free. So
Well, I know, but maybe back in the 1800s they just hid out.
Maybe they're still thinking that there were remnants of wild people that lived, as we would say now, off the grid. You know, they had found some Indians living up in the Frisco area, up in those mountains up there, and they'd been living there for I don't know how long it'd been, and no one even knew that they were up there. And they were living completely. They never needed anything, so they lived completely off the land up there.
Right.
Which humans really can't do. If I know they have that show Naked and Afraid, and believe me, if you were dumped somewhere naked, you would be afraid, because if you had nothing, you couldn't survive. Humans cannot do that. We're too fragile when it comes to that. So when you look at something that can do that, even though you would consider it an animal, it's still going to be at the top of its game. Number one, it's going to know its surrounding. It's going to know you're coming before before you even get to where you're going. He's going to know you're there. So everyone says Indians were always so in tune with their environment, but think of how in tune a creature would be. But that's all it does, is it's there all the time.
The fact that they haven't found any
I
remnants.
I
it's
agree with
just
you.
Weird.
It's really you can watch stuff, and some stuff looks really good, and some stuff you're like, why do I believe in this? It's crazy.
And that's actually what we were talking about. Is like you'd think, with as many animals that they come across that they find dead or whatever, that eventually they would find a dead Bigfoot. Do the big feet, like, do they have a ceremony where they do something that they bury or take care of this?
Eat them all?
Eat them, maybe. So
they
there is
say
no.
that they could bury their dead, but most scientists will agree in a forest environment, bones and bodies they're gone. They don't last. And I did quite a bit of backpacking in California, and I think I saw one carcass of, like, maybe it was a bobcat or something but it was on the trail, so it was kind of weird. Like, you'd almost think someone may have done something to it.
So you think the moistness of the forest? Sorry.
And our word of the day.
So
We need the
breaks-
word to drop down.
Please.
Brain moist.
You think it?
Yes, the moistness does have a lot to do with it.
You think it breaks it down, and then there's no body parts left?
Hit a trigger word over here.
It's a trigger.
We heard the magic word. Of the day.
Wait. It was damp. The dampness of the forest broke down.
No, you let the moist out of the barn. Let's run with it all the way. Let's take that baby out into the field and back.
Okay, back to the bones. They break down.
Yes.
Because of the bed.
Moistness of the forest.
He does this all the time.
Check, please.
He can't laugh too much.
He can't say moist.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't even mean it.
Oh, what a segue.
Okay, now
Because of the moisture in the forest.
moisture, yes. Oh. All right.
It's going to break down the bodies. That's what they say. So that's why a bit of levity on the set.
It's just, you find all the dinosaur bones, and I know it's in different sediment. And
That's a whole nother thing that has just kind of rocked my mind lately that I've been thinking about, because I saw this thing on the flood, the biblical flood. And when you really start thinking about all the oil we have and all, they were showing the coal deposits like in the United States and stuff. Hundreds of dinosaurs couldn't have died each year and fell in this little pit, and again over millions of years. It would have had to been a cataclysmic thing that happened all at once that buried millions of things under a lot of pressure and weight at one time. I mean, how else could it happen?
Right.
So it had to have something happen at one time to create all this.
The big boom, the whatever.
Something, yeah, the meteorite
Tidal
that
wave,
hit. It had to
meteorite,
bury everything to create these huge pockets of resources that we have. I mean, it couldn't have been just like, like you said, something dies, the other animals are gonna pick at it. Other animals eat the bones, they eat the marrow in it, and it disappears. So, but in the forest environment, it is different.
Yeah.
But dinosaur bones, La Brea tar pits. I mean, I guess Bigfoot was smart enough not to get into any of the La Brea tar pits. But see, they find things like the jawbone, and they say that they can rebuild the whole Giganticus giant ape from a jawbone and a molar tooth and another tooth. And I'm like, how is that even possible? They're guessing.
Well, yeah, you have to.
Scientists think they're so smart.
You just throw it and see what sticks.
But yeah.
Sort of like a booger.
Exactly.
How can you take 2 or 3 pieces of a skeleton and go, this is what it's like? You weren't even there. 10 million years ago, the Earth looked like this. How do you know? You weren't there.
We're such a populous country. You would think that we'd be running into them all the time at, I don't know, Target, whatever.
I agree with you there too, but in your daily life.
I did run into one at Target on the Jack Link's bag.
Oh, yeah. That's
Remember?
true.
Yeah.
Well, that is a good thing about Sasquatch, Yeti, Bigfoot, all that. You don't have to pay anyone to use that. It's not copyrighted, so everyone gets away with all the free Yeti coolers, Sasquatch beef jerky.
That's interesting because I would have thought somebody by now
You can't.
would have slapped something on that.
It's
somehow.
not real. You can't put a copyright on a fake thing. So it's kind of like a catch-22.
Yeah. I never would have ever thought that.
So if they become real, I'm gonna be the first one to go and market that name.
Or they will, and they'll be living
I
in
don't think you could still.
Sasquatch reservation. So.
Well, one reason to,
That's it. I'm not paying no economic security for
One-
no Sasquatch.
one theory that they don't want to be found is because think of what would happen if they were found. Say it's a North American ape, because there's apes all over the places. What would they do with all of this natural, all of their area where they live and stuff? It'd be protected. No one would be able to go there. You couldn't hunt them. They'd be endangered. You think the loggers want that to happen? And I've seen more credible and heard more credible stories more north, Washington, Oregon, especially Canada. They have some really, if you go back into the 50s and 60s, there's some really, men are attacked in a cabin by these creatures at night. In Ape Canyon up by Mount St. Helens. And actually, a crew of guys went back up there and actually found the remnants of where the base of the cabin was, because a lot of it was all gone after the volcano eruption. But there's stories, if you go on YouTube, you can find stories of guys that say there was Bigfoots after the eruption of Mount St. Helens, and they were telling the rangers where the other Bigfoots were to help them get them out and take care of them. So you hear
Was
stuff
their
like
hair
that.
singed at all?
Yeah, they were burnt and stuff, and some of them they had to put out of their miseries, they said. But a guy saw where they were putting all of the burned like deer and all the dead animals and everything.
So
and
it's a
they
government-
said they actually saw Bigfoot in there. So you hear stories like that, and you're like, do I believe it? Is it made up? It's.
And that again,
I totally agree with that.
And that's something that you can really flip the coin on both sides. Is this something similar to UFO, alien activity where the government is perhaps trying to cover it up? Because I know there was I want to say his name was Robert Simon. I could be wrong because my process of thinking isn't actually as it should be right now. But there was a gentleman who was like heavily like infatuated with the Bigfoot story or whatever, and he had asked the FBI for some help at some point. This was, I want to say, it was either the 60s or the 70s. I can't recall. Was it the 70s? And he had asked them for some help for some testing of some hair from the Bigfoot. And the FBI actually took it, and then everyone was like, oh, well, it's got to be, Bigfoot's got to be real if the FBI got involved, this, that, and the other, whatever. But the FBI was like, look, we did a guy a favor. We didn't necessarily send, a research team out and, just send all these resources into this plan of trying to find the Bigfoot or whatever. So it's not necessarily that the FBI, jumped on this because we believe it or whatever. We're just doing this guy a favor. And then they were trying to say that it came back as deer hair or whatever
Oh, I didn't
they
read that,
pull out.
yeah.
But here's what I'm thinking. At that point, that could be their cover up. That could totally be something that they're like, we don't want everyone to get maybe Bigfoot's dangerous, maybe he's not, whatever. But in terms of what they feel, maybe what they discovered, they didn't feel like sharing. They don't want to bring that out into the light. They feel like it's just something that they want to kind of keep in wraps for themselves or whatever. So you could look at it from that point of the scope.
In quite a few stories of people recalling their encounter, afterwards they're met with law enforcement and one other guy that isn't dressed like a police officer. He's in plain clothes, and he's adamant, telling the person, you saw a bear. That's what you saw. You didn't. What are you talking about? You didn't see no Bigfoot. It's a bear. And a lot of these stories have this. And the one guy that listens to these people tell the stories, he always says like it could be a government contractor or something.
Yeah.
Coming in, plain clothes. But some of these stories go way back into the 60s where this is happening. There's a good one that happened like in 83, 84. An English woman was taking pictures off the coast of like Carmel up in that area. Not in Carmel, but outside. And she encountered some down on the beach. And she's shaken when she tells the story still. And I just heard her retell it, and there was 3 of them, or 4 of them, and there was 2 little ones, a male and a female. And she was taking pictures, and she saw them, and she just like froze. Like she said, it was like someone walked over your grave. She just froze, and she thought they were dogs or something large, a cat, or she's from England. She has no idea what she's looking at. All of a sudden, this thing stands up. She said, and they were working the seaweed, like chewing the seaweed and putting it on their shoulders and chewing it up. And I don't know what they would be doing with that for that, but the male seemed like it was going to take her out, and she said the female and the male got in this big argument, and she says it was a domestic, she called it, the English lady, and she said finally the male ran over to her and he just slammed his arms into the ground. She said she could feel it, and he was like 10 feet from her, and she's up on, and she said she just passed out from fear. She just passed out, and when she woke up, she was at her car. And her jacket was up around like she was drugged up there, and she was all bruised up, and the side of her face was all scratched up. And when she told her story, that's what happened. There was a sheriff, and then another guy came and kept telling her it was a bear. You saw a bear. You don't know what you're talking about. But she's like shaking when she tells the story. She's gonna start crying again. She is shaken from the story. And she was like a businesswoman from England, like rising through the ranks. So she's not like some crackpot that.
Coming up with some story. And that's something I read too, is with the tracks, like the footprints or whatever that they found or whatever. Some of them did have claws, and so they were trying to say, 5 toes and claws, it has to be a bear, whatever. But there were large footprints.
They always say
could've
that
been an
bears.
old one.
They always say bears double stepped back into there, which isn't true. If you watch, there's a lot of guys on. I was telling you on YouTube, but Thinker Thunker, he's really good, and what was the other one I told you was MK Davis.
Yeah.
MK Davis is really good. There's one other guy on there, Thinker Thunker, MK Davis, and what was the other guy I was watching on there? There's a guy up in Canada, but they think he may be a crackpot. He's a guy, he's actually taken pictures of a Bigfoot. If you go on there, his name's Todd Standing. Hope I don't get in trouble for saying
What's his name?
Todd Standing, and he has actual pictures that he took a Bigfoot in Canada, and he's like an ex-army ranger, sniper, whatever, and he knows tracking and all that. So, but yep, those he says those are pictures of actual Bigfoot right there. And the other guy, Thinker Thunker or MK Davis, took his picture and superimposed it over the Bigfoot because everyone was saying that's just the guy with the makeup on. and he has a show called Finding Bigfoot, and you can watch that and decide for yourself what you think about the guy.
You did a lot of shows. You watched a lot of shows and stuff like that. You said when you were younger or whatever.
Oh yeah, a lot of them. I don't remember what they're called now, but yeah.
Yeah, you were deep
In
into
Search
it as
of
well.
stuff like that, Monster
Yep.
Quest.
It was probably Captain Caveman.
Well, he could.
I don't think I was that. Wait, was I that old back when Captain Caveman was around? No, I was just getting over with.
You
Captain
would
Caveman.
not. I was watching that, so you definitely probably were not watching.
He was like a Bigfoot.
He was a
That
little
caveman
foot.
was a Neanderthal.
He was like Mikey a little.
Oh, what? It was really hairy.
Probably, yeah, Neanderthal. See, and they say a lot of these people could be that. Some of these people could be mistaken as lost
Hairy.
tribes, or they start talking about
Right.
the
So like
the
Kentucky.
Indian population. They said that they would come down and take their women.
It's
There's-
all inbred like Kentucky.
That is.
The Bigfoot.
I didn't want to
Well,
really say about that, but that's what they were trying
He's
to get
not
around.
from
That
Kentucky.
the Bigfoot was running down and mudding up that gene pool with
Yeah.
the Indians. So
Oh shit.
there were giants that lived up in Nevada, Loveless Canyon. They actually have mummies of like 8,
Yeah, I
9
remember
foot.
reading they actually found giant skeletons up there.
And the sandals, everything. And the Indians would say that they were cannibals, but these giants had red hair and fair skin, so they weren't Indians. And this is when the water level used to go all the way up to the cave line.
Oh,
In Nevada
shit.
was a giant lake there. So the Indians got fed up of them taking their women and eating them.
Well, yeah.
Not eating the women, taking the women. I should make, taking the women and eating the people.
Yeah, I didn't say eating the women.
They
but-
finally went up there, sneak attack, and they killed them all.
Okay, so you're saying possibly the giant redheads and the native ladies made big feet? Bigfoot? No.
No, not that. No,
Okay.
but they could account for the European-looking features in Indians if they did actually,
Right.
consummate with the women. I don't know. They
Yeah,
didn't
I
get
don't know
into
if
that.
they-
All I know is they killed them all.
I think it would be more of a.
I don't know. I don't know how the logistics were. They're 9 feet tall. They're little Indian.
It would work.
It just is be ugly. But yeah, they killed them all. They burned them. They lit a huge fire at the front of the cave, and it got so hot it changed the rock into like a taffy type of substance. And one of the giants had stuck his hand in it and then stuck it on the wall because that M.K. Davis did a color thing on it. You can see like if you stuck your hand in mud and then when you pull it away, you get all those like ridges that like stick. That's all there. So it's not something that something drew. So that is an actual handprint of how big they were. So they have pictures of those mummies, and you can go to the museum. So there were giants. I mean, up to 9 feet tall. They were living here. So that doesn't account for Bigfoot.
No.
Some people think it's the fallen angels that had sex with humans on Earth, and God damned their children to be big hairy creatures. And some people go with that. Some people say they're interdimensional creatures. There's
I don't
That
know.
aliens brought them down here.
yes, that too. Yeah,
I have to see
some
it to
people say
believe
they
it.
don't want them to be discovered because it'll ruin the whole thing about religion, which I don't quite understand, because to me it would just be another creature on Earth. I don't know why. It's not the missing link. It's not a human. It's just another creature, if it does exist.
If it does exist.
You said you can't get pictures of the dang thing. You can't. Some people have blurry pictures, of course, and they've got a few on some drones. They have a couple of, they say, looking up, but they're re-examining a lot of pictures that people have taken, like in the Everglades, and they start that M.K. Davis, like I said, you start forcing color into the picture to bring out the contrast and what's in it, and they find when they look at these pictures, you see something looking at you. It's there the whole time.
Why
and
don't
they're
they use
watching.
thermal imaging?
They
That's what
some
I-
people do have some thermal imaging, and they say you can't fake that, but they
So
did
you
a
think
test
this
on it. You
original
can't fake
footage
it.
is real?
I do believe that the 1967 Patty film is real.
I do see her breasts. I never noticed it before.
I believe it's real, and when they slow it down, and they put a lot of emphasis on that because they swing and they sway, and they just say, why would you build that into a costume? I mean, I really don't think they had the technology back then to make that realistic looking of a costume, because now that they can use HD tracking, and they've stabilized it to where it's not jumping all around. You can see muscles bulging in the legs. You can see the muscle groups that a humanoid bipedal creature would have. I mean, it's there, and who would build all that into a costume? It's just
It is better than what Planet of the Apes at the time, so it is a little bit better than that.
And that guy said he couldn't do that.
Yeah.
He said he couldn't do that.
Well,
It's just hard to accept, because once again, we've always been made it out to be a joke. When you say Bigfoot, then you're like, oh, you're crazy. Bigfoot.
okay, so Bigfoot, yay, nay?
I don't know. It's hard. It's hard. Like he just said, it's really hard to say a yay or a nay. I mean, judging by like
In the middle.
a lot of the stuff that I've seen, and you know, some of it's like really, and some of it's like ooh, and you know, just sitting here talking about stuff like that, and I'm like, yeah, especially with the whole FBI thing, you know, and it could be just some giant cover up, especially if they know the existence is real. So I'm leaning on that it very well could be a possibility.
Mikey, yay, nay?
Yay.
Yay. Oh,
Yay.
we have a convert.
I like that.
And well, you're yay.
I was way a nay until I saw the film on body mechanics, how humans walk, how the difference between the length of our legs and the length of our arms. If you're Kareem Abdul-Jabbar or Bruce Lee, it's still, I think your arms are only like 80. It's the ratio of what your arms and your legs are. All humans, it's the same. But when you measure them on Patty here,
They're more ape-like.
yes. And when humans walk, I think they only, the degree of what they lift their legs, even if you're wearing like big old clown shoes, they showed a bunch of clowns in a parade. We're all used to taking the easiest way possible. So we glide when we walk. They pick their feet up because they're walking over everything. So they walk completely different.
I'm still
He said that in a hoax film, the only thing that it will reveal is the hoax. But in that film, it keeps revealing more and more, like I told you, which you haven't watched yet, but we don't need to get into that.
I guess I believe it a little bit more than God, because I've never seen a picture of God.
Well, yes, you
So-
have, but you don't know if it's a real picture.
Oh, okay, yes. This is a weird kind of a parting note, but have you ever seen that Bigfootish movie?
Harry and the Hendersons.
No.
Oh,
That's a great movie.
I love that movie.
Bobcat Goldthwait made it?
Bobcat Goldthwait made it. And pretty much after Shakes the Clown, I didn't watch too much at what he made.
It's actually pretty good. You never see anything, but it's very suspenseful. He wrote it, directed it, the whole shebang, won some awards at film festivals.
Is it filmed in like the Blair Witch
Yes.
style?
It was kind of weird at first because she's filming him, you know, and they're
Yep.
in this tent and they're
No, I saw it.
and
I
they just
saw it.
kept going back around in circles.
It's
like,
super creepy, and it's all done
Yeah.
at night, pretty much.
It worked out pretty good, actually. I was surprised I sat through the whole thing because I have the attention span of a
I
gnat.
like Shakes the Clown better.
Okay, I haven't seen that one.
That's
Okay.
well, maybe.
Any parting thoughts?
That was it. Yeah,
That was it?
I'm definitely.
I could
more,
go another hour on
I'm-
Bigfoot.
I'm definitely
That's
more
great.
intrigued now than ever.
Guys? Where'd you go?